the Council, ladies and gentlemen, please be upstanding for His Worshipful the Mayor of Chorley, Councillor Gordon France.
Good evening, please be seated. You'll have to just bear with me because we talk about midnight meetings and my body clock thinks it's 11:30 at night. That's what it would be in India anyway. Thank you to everyone for attending this meeting. My name is Councillor Gordon France and I'm the Mayor. Members of the public are welcome to observe the proceedings on YouTube. For any members of the public with us in the council chamber, please remain seated and quiet during the proceedings. Due to regulations, only those members physically present are able to vote. When you're participating, please speak towards the microphone, I think I am, so everyone can hear. Please do not obstruct your mouth to ensure that anyone lip reading can do so. If anyone is having issues, please let Democratic Services know. Some housekeeping. We're not expecting a fire drill, so if the alarm sounds, please exit the way you came in. Please ensure that any mobile phones are switched to silent. If the technology fails, I will adjourn the meeting to try and resolve the issue. Declarations of interest. Oh, apologies, sorry. We've got apologies from Sam Martin, Councillor Beverly Murray, Councillor Sina Khan, and Councillor Ryan Towers. Thank you, Chris. Declarations of interest. Members are reminded of their responsibility to declare any pecuniary interests in respect of any matters contained in this agenda. Are there any declarations of interest? Minutes, pages 5 to 10. This item is for decision. Are there any issues to raise on the accuracy of the minutes? Councillor Bradley, please can you present the minutes?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Can I propose that the minutes of the meeting held on the 28th of January 2025 are taken as a true and correct record of that meeting? Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson, please can you...
Seconded, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Right, this item is for a vote. All those for? Against? Abstentions? That's gone forward, thank you. Mayoral announcements. For those of you who aren't aware, our Director of Governance, Chris Moister, will be moving on to a new role at Sefton Council in April, which means that this is his last full council meeting. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Chris for his service to the council over many years and wish him every success in his new role. Would anyone else like to comment? Councillor Bradley.
Oh, go on, Mr Mayor. If I have to. Yes, Mr Mayor. It's a notable passing because a young, sprightly, youthful Chris Moister arrived at this council in 2008. Exactly. Looking. Thank you, Councillor Molyneux, for stealing my lines as usual. The same year that myself and Councillor Wilson were elected onto this council and Councillor Berry was re-elected onto this council, Warren Haskell was looking the best, but probably that side is looking a lot better than this side, that's for sure. No, so at that stage, back in those heady days of the noughties, as they were called, obviously Chris came into this council. He worked, I think, under the auspices of Andy Doherty as our legal head in those days. Many people won't remember that name, I struggled myself. And then after that, I think Chris worked directly to Gary Hall, that well-known legal brain that many people still refer to with awe in legal circles in local government, don't they? One word to describe it. But at all times, and Chris has been here a very long time, all the time for our administration, like most people, when you see Chris looming into view, you think, oh, here's trouble. When your legal turn up, you've got a problem. You know, something's gone wrong. And I know he's had to see a very grumpy side of me when I've been referred to standards and explained to me, Alistair, it's a process you have to go through. And we've all probably been there at some time or other. Somebody said, you know, made a complaint about you. It's totally unfounded, but Chris is there to advise, calm you down, tell you how to do things. But also, throughout the administration, with all the stuff that we've done with South Ribble, going to shared services, Chris has been at the focal point legally for this council and is in the nicest possible way protected this council many, many times that many people in this room won't have seen. But take it from me, when you are leading administration and the different chief executives and what have you that we've had, value the fact that Chris was always batting for Chorley. Okay? We've had our differences of views, I think, over the years. Usually, no, you wouldn't. So you put it more diplomatically. Usually about my choice of words. So that, at that point, both Peter and Chris try and calm me down. But it's all about context and about, I think one thing Chris has taught me to do is listen to people, number one, and maybe don't be the first person to say something, number two, because that doesn't always the best way forward. So consideration on all things, Councillor Lynch, is always a good way forward. Yeah, that's his view on all life. Now he's changed. We've all changed. Seriously though, Chris. Chris's interests, as we all know, are many and varied. Councillor Hanway, come across. Many and varied. Obsessed by sci-fi. Obsessed by all things geeky. But imagine my surprise. In the 10K, I was lining up to the 10K. Who's next to me? Chris Moister. And tried to beat me. So, but Chris will turn his hand to anything if needs be, and he has had to turn his hand to many things over the years on behalf of Chorley Council. That's why we all know that he'll be a success going to Sefton. You know, Chorley's loss is Sefton's gain. We do wish you all the very best in the future, and all the you know, and hope that it all works out for you. We'll see who your replacement is, and if we can give them half a torrid of time as we're giving you, Chris, over the years, that'll be what they expect to see from our administration. But seriously, thank you for everything you've done, and enjoy the many years ahead of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In a way, like Councillors Bradley and Wilson, ever since I started my first term in 2010, Chris was here, and he's still here until a month or two. I don't know when he started, but the poison chalice that is the monitoring officer must be a hell of a job to do in a council like this, because usually the people who are complained about invariably think they're right. And you do need a steady little hand to say, no, it doesn't quite work like that. So let's get on with it. The one thing that concerns me is that given what's on the agenda item later on, I'm hoping that we're not deserting a sinking ship. But we shall see. We shall see. No, as I said, I've known Chris for a long time, probably 15 years now, off and on. And I think one of our early skirmishes, like Councillor Bradley, was when I was referred to him as a parish councillor. I don't think it went anywhere, and Chris has always been very fair. I've always found him very fair. He's worked very closely with him on the governance committee. He's always been very, very helpful with the legal side of it. I mean, it is interesting to note that he's moving nearer to his favourite red team from Liverpool. I'm just hoping he makes sure they keep that trophy warm for 6 months until 12 months until next year when we get it back. But thank you, Chris. Thanks for all your help. Seriously.
Councillor Deborah Platt, did you want to say something?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to say thank you from all the parish council's point of view, which is a hidden job that you have to do being the monitoring officer, and you've looked after the parish councils really well, and they always know that they can give you a call, ask you a question before something else happens, or they go on and do something different. And I think, I know talking to lots of people all around the county, I appreciate having an excellent monitoring officer here at Chorley, and I do hope we get a good replacement. But obviously I'll still be dealing with you over in Sefton, but it'll be a loss to Chorley, I think, unless we get a really, really great replacement. Thanks very much, Chris.
I just wanted to say that I'm sure I speak for many councillors in saying that I'm really sad that you're going, because I think that you are very professional and also very you're very sympathetic. So I just wanted to say that.
Sorry. Right, moving on. Public questions. No public questions have been received. Revenue budget 2025-26 and medium-term financial strategy and capital programme 2025 to 2028, pages 11 to 148 on your agenda. This item's for decision. Councillor Wilson, please present this item.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just rereading my notes that I scribbled on the train on the way up, but I can't read them, so I'll put that piece of paper down and say what I think I need to cover in this item. But it's a pleasure, as always, to present the budget for the forthcoming financial year. And I would like to start with a thank you. Probably the two most difficult jobs of this council, one being a legal monitoring officer, one being the head of finance. So I'll start with a thank you to Chris, first of all, for everything he's done. And as Alza said, we sort of entered the council the same year that Chris started. And yeah, there was times when we agreed with him, there was times when he disagreed. And Chris has had many successes in his role, which is a very difficult role. But you have had two failures, making Alistair more considered and not making sure he doesn't have to speak at every turn. If that's what he said, he attributed towards your qualities before, then you failed. But we do thank Chris for his service, obviously, and you know it is a tricky, thankless task at many times. Likewise, turning to Neil, who of course is relatively new in post, we'd like to thank Neil and his team for all the work done in the preparation of the council's budget. It's never an easy task at the best of times, but as always, Mr. Mayor, we meet in very challenging times in terms of local government finance, in terms of government finance as a whole. And I've stood here many times before and explained the difficulties that our officers have and the council has in setting a budget, and in particular setting a medium-term financial plan when you are only given a one-year settlement from the government and you are not given any indication of where future monies may be coming from. Unfortunately, despite the change in Westminster in July last year, that still remains the case. However, I would just caveat that with the fact that, of course, the current government have had 7 months on the job compared to 14 years of the previous government, so I shan't be too critical. But if I'm hearing another year saying the same thing, then perhaps we can exactly, and write that down, Councillor Platt. Perhaps we can be a bit more. Perhaps we can be a bit more critical of the Labour government. But it is worth mentioning, and it does reference it in the papers, that we do have this position where we are still on a one-year settlement. There is no certainty in terms of planning for the future. It does make the job exceptionally difficult in terms of making forward projections. The government have committed to providing us with multi-year settlements. Let's hope they do, because it gives us certainty that we need. The government has promised to look at the fair funding review, and again, let's hope that does come forward. And the government has promised to again look at business rates and the redistribution of those, and again, let's hope that comes forward, because that's what we need. So the report in front of members outlines the main provisions that were being proposed in this year's budget, and given that level of uncertainty, you can see that even despite all those challenges, we have balanced the budget for this year. As usual, we've balanced the budget. But obviously moving forward into the next year and the year after, there are projected deficits there. And a lot of that is generated for that very reason that we just do not know. So we don't know what the business rates review will bring. We don't know what the fair funding review will bring. We don't know what other sources of income that are given in one-off grants, whether they will continue or not. So there is a great deal of uncertainty. But as far as we're concerned, our programme and our agenda to deliver on what people of Chorley want to see remains exactly the same. And despite those levels of uncertainty, we continue to invest. We continue to make improvements in terms of frontline services. And as a council, hopefully, we still continue to listen to what residents want and then deliver, more importantly, in the local communities. So in terms of the resourcing of our programme, clearly the first item on the recommendation is the increase in council tax, and you can see that's gone up by 2.99%. Council tax increases are something you never take lightly. You don't rush in there and do it. We only do it when we think that it's absolutely necessary. We do think it is necessary this year, and that's why the proposal is there. But I'll come back to council tax, Mr. Mayor, if I may, just a little later on. As well as making sure that we maximise our revenue streams, as it were, we also make sure that we are trying to be resilient for the future. So you can see that we stick to the £4 million target in terms of general balances, and we also have almost up to £5 million in earmark reserves as well. So that's the money that's there, save for the rainy day, maybe to sort of use to balance the books when we need it if we face tougher times. So we remain cautious and we remain prudent in our approach, Mr. Mayor, in terms of budgeting, but at the same time, we also make sure that we continue to invest, as I just said. So where are those investment items? Well, as the report sets out, we have £60 million capital programme, and that actually covers a range of areas. We're looking at investing significant funds into housing, so that's in particular 800,000 plus into providing temporary accommodation for families. We do have facilities such as Cotswold, but that's not really ideal for those with young children, so we're going to create new accommodation for those people. We're looking at an additional £300,000 invested into Astley Hall to build on the work that we've already done at the Hall. We've all seen the multi-million-pound projects to improve the front of Astley Hall and the visitor experience. This is now work on the West Wing, which is supported by a grant as well from external sources. We've got the £1.5 million earmark to accommodate the changes to waste collections, in particular food waste. We've got £330,000 going towards business grants, building on what we've done in the past, Mr. Mayor, in terms of supporting businesses, bringing jobs into the area and making sure that businesses who are here can also expand and increase their workforce. Biggest of all, in terms of financial package, is the £44 million town centre redevelopment. That comes after successful lobbying by ourselves and by our MP to get £20 million from the government, and then matched by our own investment from this council to redevelop and repurpose our town centre. We've already seen a significant amount going on in the town over our administration's lifetime, but once again we look to renew, to bring more people into the town, more businesses into the town, and make sure that it remains a vibrant hub in the ever-changing world. And we're also crucially, Mr. Mayor, investing £3.5 million into All Seasons Leisure Centre. We've talked before about leisure centres and the challenges they present. It's important that we make the leisure centre as popular as it can possibly be and accommodate what people actually want from leisure centres. So we need to invest now in order to make sure that facilities are there, not just fit for purpose, but actually attractive for people to use. So the investment packages there that I outlined, Mr. Mayor, are ambitious and they are involving big sums of money. They cover many areas that the council highlighted as their priority in the last corporate strategy meeting in November, whether that be housing, business, people living in their own communities and being supported. So we do that. But what I'd like to emphasise, Mr. Mayor, is that is the new items for this forthcoming year. But I think it's also worth reflecting, particularly at budget time, what perhaps we now consider as business as usual as what this council does. But actually, when you analyse it, it takes the council well beyond what any normal district council does. So, for example, we invest £125,000 a year in the youth zone, supporting our young people, giving them purpose, giving them opportunities. We support bus services into rural communities, such as into the east side of Chorley, which otherwise would have been taken away many years ago. As I mentioned, we've got more money going into business grants, but we've been running those projects and those programmes for many years. We now got new bus shelters being installed, 59 bus shelters, I think, installed. We've taken over the running of the bus station and installed new toilet facilities, new seating, new digital boards. We've done work into supporting those families who are most vulnerable through the social prescribing and actually getting advice and support to people early on so they don't face the huge debts and the huge problems that they pick up later on. We've got the Jobs and Skills programme that we've been running. We've got investments in parks and open spaces that have been done year on year on year, and was acknowledged with the fact that we've got 8 green flags. All that is business as usual. All that doesn't appear, well, the numbers are there, but it doesn't appear on the face of it in the reports. So we should really, really take pride that not only does this council take on bold schemes and deliver what we think are priorities for the public, that what's incorporated as business as usual, and we've perhaps come a little complacent about, is actually very, very, very important for people out there. It's very, very bold. It's very innovative for a borough council, a small borough council such as Chorley, and it makes sure that Chorley continues to deliver on behalf of our residents, Mr. Mayor. With that in mind in terms of what's business as usual, with that in mind in terms of the new investment items that we're bringing forward this year, I return to council tax, Mr. Mayor. And yes, there is an increase in council tax this year. But let's put that in perspective. That equates to something like 11 or 12p a week for an average Band D. And that reminds us of the small amount of money that we receive out of the council tax bill compared to county council and other authorities. But also, Mr. Mayor, as it says in the budget papers, we have the second lowest council tax rate in Lancashire. And for all those investment items and for all that delivery on the ground and for all that prioritising what our residents want in our communities that we represent, to have all that and the second lowest council tax in Lancashire shows that this council delivers value for money, that we deliver it efficiently, we deliver it well, and that we remain relevant to the people who we represent by making sure that we deliver on local priorities as efficiently and effectively as possible. And therefore, Mr. Mayor, I'm delighted to present this budget this evening and hope that all members will vote in favour of it. Thank you.
Yes, of course. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you to Peter for the way he presented that, and as he has done for many years, a continuation of the framework that we've previously set up as an administration. This is very much a continuation of that previous programme. Yes, times are tough, yes, times are hard, but yet Chorley can still keep doing the things it thinks are important above and beyond what other councils are doing. And we don't have to look very far away to councils who are struggling financially. Last night's budget meeting in West Lancashire, where the vote went to close 2 leisure centres. We are investing money in Brinscoll Bath this year. We are planning to invest more money in All Seasons Leisure Centre, substantial amounts of money. We can still keep doing that because we are well financially run, because we plan ahead, we think about the future, and we have invested in income streams that allow us to keep doing that. So, you know, we've heard for a long time about your borrowing, your debt, all the rest of it. No, we are investing in assets, and our assets far, far outweigh our borrowings, Mr. Mayor. So thank you to Peter, thank you for the team, as he said. It's part of an overall framework, and this morning we can do the good things of this council because we are well fiscally managed, we are well financially run. So this morning I was on Radio Lancashire, you may have heard of me this morning, about our destination management plan to attract more visitors to Chorley, to get more people to come and spend money in Chorley, because it's a virtuous thing. The more they spend, the less we have to spend. The more they spend, the more less we have to spend. I think I did go on radio, though, promising a beach in Chorley, Peter, so you may need to add that into your budget if we can as an amendment, Mr. Mayor. When pushed, I said the beach was on order, so we'll see where that ends up, Mr. Mayor. In my own portfolio, I see the impact of that as well. So we had a business event last week at Park Hall, the newly refurbished Park Hall. If you've not been recently, I urge you to go down there and have a look what that hotel's like now. It's very nice, and they were doing some amazing stuff. It'll take them years to finish it because it's a big project, but they're doing it. Business rates. Peter's right. We don't know where we are on business rates, and the government needs to reduce business rates. Business rates is a disincentive for a lot of people to do business. That is, you know, perverse in the extreme. And again, when I was hanging around the market doing the destination management stuff this morning, the big thing that most of the shopkeepers in the town centre are complaining about is business rates. We need to get that resolved with the government. But what it's enabling us to do is a lot of this business support that we are doing. and that is valued by Chorley businesses. The phrase we often hear is, nobody else is doing this. Nobody else is supporting businesses like you do here in Chorley. It's almost embarrassing how nice the things are saying about the business support team in the council, but that wouldn't be able to be done without the people in this room fiscally managing the council well. That is creating jobs for Chorley people here in Chorley, so our population doesn't have to go outside the town, go to Manchester or Liverpool to do work. Jobs are being created here in Chorley, and that again is feeding back into the system, that virtuous circle. How else do we know that we're doing a good job? Today I had the delight of going to the Unison AGM here in this town hall. Our workforce, in its union meeting, same as I've done for a number of years now, to an hour of questioning with it wasn't the leader of South Ribble because unfortunately she was at a funeral, but one of their cabinet members alongside me. He'd not been before, and he went, "What's it going to be like, Alistair?" And I went, "It's usually really pleasant, because our staff value the fact that they're valued." How do we know they're valued? Because they raise problems, they raise concerns, they moan about the chief exec like you'd expect anybody to do, to moan about their bosses. Sorry, Chris, but they did. But they feel like they have a voice, they feel like they're well remunerated in these tough times when other councils are making job cuts, when we see the threat of job cuts across industries and across other parts of the public sector. Our workforce knows that they get a good rate of pay, and a fair deal from Chorley Council. That's a lot to be said for that. They're not, they're never going to be ecstatic, but they feel like they are valued because they get the money that pays them to be valued. And then there was a conversation at the last Lancashire Leaders meeting where we went around the room a bit like, like a school classroom where you go around the room and you say what you've done and what you're going to do. It was about budgets for this year and next year from all the councils in Lancashire. So we basically had a moan about the size of our budget gap or our deficit or whatever it was. But in all reality, because the papers had already come out around this to the Cabinet for consultation, I could say, surely this year we'll have a balanced budget. Yes, there's a challenge for next year, but there's always a challenge for next year, but we have a balanced budget. There were many councils in that room in Lancashire who have had this year to dip into their reserves, significantly dip into their reserves, just to keep the lights on, to keep their staff paid. Now, that's a sign of a sector in distress. That's a sign of a country in distress, in my view. And the number of 114 notices that councils are serving because they're effectively insolvent is increasing. We see it all the time in the press. This council is nowhere near that situation because we are well financially managed. And that's, again, tribute to Peter and the staff who do that, but all of us who are involved in running this council. And what does that do? There'll be a discussion on later in the agenda about local government reorganisation, which we are told is coming. And I've just been at the grandly named with the Chief Executive this afternoon, Convention of the North, which is a meeting of all the councils and mayors and goodness knows what across the north of England, because reorganisation is the big thing, and mayors and that concentration into councils. What that means is, when we go into discussions as soon as next Wednesday with other Lancashire leaders about how is Chorley going to reorganise, we can go in with the ability that we know where our money is at. We know where what our borrowings are. We know, what our liabilities are, but we also know what our assets are and where our money's coming from, and we're not in a bad state. That gives us the confidence to have those conversations in a stable financial position, in a position where we can have a straight conversation with others without pretending that our books are showing something different than what's the actual reality. So we need to keep like that over the next couple of years, because whatever happens in the future, we need to keep that strong and stable financial base. So I'm more than happy to second this, Mr. Mayor. I'm delighted with the things that Peter said, and hopefully other councillors recognise some of the things that are happening in their wards that they can also point to with this report. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Clark, Alan Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think roughly this time last year, and this meeting's a little bit more calm, fortuitously, but I think my predecessor, Councillor Collins, mentioned that we're more than happy to go along with the budget in these uncertain times. This year it might be different. I've looked through and I'm not seeing where it's different, to be honest with you, so I think I'm just going to have to repeat his mantra from last year, unfortunately. I mean, one of the things Councillor Wilson mentioned was quite interesting about the new government. It's only been in, and the previous government had 14 years. But by the same token, the new government had 14 years to put some plans into place for when they actually walk through the front door. But who knows? And please don't mention the fictitious 20-odd billion. Now, I would really genuinely like to echo the thanks of my two colleagues there to the officers for producing these figures. I can't imagine how much work goes into it, because I know how much work goes into reading it. And you've done a cracking job. And obviously you've done a cracking job in keeping everybody on the straight and narrow and bringing us to this position where we don't have to put excessive amounts in budgets. We don't have to follow your prospective colleagues from South Ribble and start closing down our leisure centres and West Lancs. I wouldn't mind if written in capital letters on there. So yeah, very good. What was also refreshing, actually, looking through the figures, unless I've missed something really drastic, there doesn't appear to be any provision for us to be sold any more pubs by Lancashire County Council, which, again, to us is a very good thing. So we can put that behind us. And I think you get the usual thing. You mentioned the borrowings, and yes, that's probably the only area we will ever differ. We would go along with most of your figures, but hope to reduce the borrowings by liquidating some of the more underutilised assets. I know that has started in certain areas, and hopefully it will continue. I think last year, was it last year in the council tax bill, little flyer came out, and I think the first sentence, if my memory serves me correctly, was how surprised we were to be in special measures. I'm just hoping that a similar thing is included in this year's. So really, that's it. You know, we can't find anything to object to. We'd like to go along with most of the budget. I think we all know we will always have our differences on one particular item, but that's what it is. I think the administration and the officers certainly have done a tremendous job in putting this budget together and keeping us on the straight and narrow. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Alan Platt. Do you want to come back on that, Councillor Wilson, or?
I mean, if there's no other questions immediately, I will do so. Just two things. I mean, yes, we've constantly discussed the borrowing issue. I just reiterate what it says in the report, which is that the borrowing we have engaged in has been with specific purposes of purchasing, let's say, whether it was TVS or Market Walk, which was with the purpose of creating income into this council, with the purpose of actually taking back control of our town centre. As the report clearly states, that works. Those investment items bring in a revenue after the borrowing costs are paid of around about £2 million a year, sort of about 17-18% of a directorate's budget in this council. It's a significant income. Without it, I'd like to know what we would have ever have done. So I do accept the premise of your borrowing is X amount, but I completely believe it's absolutely right. It continues to be right. However, I will say with one caveat, that if at ever any moment that changes, or you think that your asset is worth of a value and it is worth disposing of, or in any shape or form, we'll always be flexible, because you have to be. That's common sense financial management. But in essence, I believe those investments were sound. I still believe they're sound. And again, a lot of what I just explained in terms of what we're doing and where we're investing is large parts of the income, largely down to the income that's brought into this council. So I'm proud to stand here and say it's been a good thing, and we continue to work in that way.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Deborah Platt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to assist Councillor Wilson, really, by Alistair's over-promising. We already have a beach, and it's in Exton, and it's under your control, so don't worry about it. And if anybody wants to see a picture, I'll show you.
No, I don't think anybody will. Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else? We need to take a recorded vote on this item, Chris. Recommendations are as at para 2A to K. Can we go to the vote, please? All those four. Got it. Right, okay.
Sorry, I'm going to have to read out your names for this one. If you can say for, against or abstain when I call your name. Councillor Ainsworth. Councillor Amawi. Councillor Beaver. Councillor Berry. Councillor Bradley. Councillor Brown. Councillor Clifford. Councillor Gordon France.
4.
Councillor Margaret France. Councillor G. Councillor Gray. Councillor Green. Councillor Hayden. Councillor Hilton. Councillor Howarth. Councillor Samir Khan. Councillor Zara Khan. Councillor Beach. Councillor Lees. Councillor Lowe. Councillor Lynch. Councillor McGovern. Councillor Molyneux. Councillor Morwood. Councillor Moss. Councillor Alan Platt. Councillor Deborah Platt. Councillor Sherwood. Councillor Snow. Councillor Southern. Councillor Singh. Councillor Snape. Councillor Whiffin. Councillor Whittam. Councillor Whittaker. Councillor Wilkie. Councillor Williamson. And Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. That's obviously been carried unanimously. Don't need to do anything. No. It's 4, wasn't it? Unanimous. Item 6, local government reorganisation and development. This is pages 149 to 156. This item's for decision. Councillor Bradley, please can you present this item?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Where do I start with this paper, Mr. Mayor? A long, long time ago, I think, is the best place to start. In a different galaxy or whatever the words are to start Star Wars. No, this has been going on a long time in Lancashire and a long time in this council, going back to how long Mr. Moyster's been here. This has been going on almost as long. This is about local government reorganisation in Lancashire. It's been on the agenda a number of times. Chorley's had numerous positions over the years. It's led to rows in our group, it's led to rows in council, and it's led to rows in councils across Lancashire in the past. But we are here yet again, Mr. Mayor, and therefore, as a result of the government, as part of its manifesto, the Labour government was elected last summer, and then a white paper that came before the House of Commons before Christmas, the week before Christmas, and then a letter to councils from the Minister at the end of January. Lancashire has to respond about its appetite for local government reorganisation by the 21st of March. And there is a meeting next Wednesday of Lancashire leaders where we're going to discuss the tricky subject of local government reorganisation in Lancashire, which some people are looking forward to more than others. I think that's the best way of putting it. So we have to get to a position, or I would like us to get to a position that reflects on what Chorley thinks the situation is currently. To allow me and the Chief Executive and anybody else involved the mandate from Chorley Council about what we think is important in that reorganisation. Members will be aware that sometime a year, 18 months ago, the then Conservative government granted a combined authority arrangement to the upper tiers councils only in Lancashire, which was the County Council and the 2 unitary authorities. The 12 districts were unhappy about that because that excluded us from that joint working arrangement. That has carried on. I represent the districts in those meetings, but only there as a non-voting member. The reason we've kept involved is so we know what's going on. Okay? That is a separate line to what the government is also requiring of Lancashire, which is a mayor election next year, i.e. in 2026, for a directly elected mayor, alongside the directly elected mayors in Manchester and Liverpool, and alongside a request from the government that Lancashire put forward its plans for local government reorganisation, which means they want to see a simplified version of local government in Lancashire. Because currently you have the 12 districts, 2 unitaries, and over the 12 districts you have the county council that has no direct involvement in either Blackburn and Blackpool. So much so that when you drive out of Chorley and into Blackburn, you say you are leaving Lancashire and welcome to Lancashire coming the other way, which is ridiculous because Blackburn is still in Lancashire as far as I'm concerned. It's just not in the administrative bit of Lancashire. So anyway, it's where we are. So this paper, Mr Mayor, as it says in the recommendations, notes that the council notes the likely process for development of proposals for local government reorganisation. The council supports the model that we're putting forward, which we'll go through in a minute, and that the council delegates to myself as the executive leader to discuss that position in relation to the Lancashire's plans to be put forward later in March. So the government are setting these deadlines. The one thing the government aren't being, though, is particularly prescriptive of how Lancashire goes about doing that. It does have some demands, and those are laid out in the papers around the framework that the government has requested, I think mainly in clause 14. It's asked for that interim plan back by March, so points A through to H identify things like, to ask us to identify any barriers to challenges to reorganisation, the likely options for sizes of councils, indicative costs, democratic representation, i.e. number of councillors, all that kind of stuff. They're asking us to lay that out by the 21st of March. We will be unable to do that, I imagine, Mr Mayor, because that's a very short timescale to do all that work. What we'll have to do is give some indication that we've considered all those things. And what it then follows up in paragraph 16 is where it says that full proposals for reorganisation will have to be submitted to the government in November this year. Again, that is quite quick in local government world to do it by then. And the reason for that, Mr Mayor, is the government has already announced a number of councils who are in the first tranche of this reorganisation. Cheshire is one of those, and as a lot of southern councils such as Surrey, Sussex, etc., who have shown an interest in doing that. Some of those councils have had their county elections postponed. Lancashire's elections carry on. So in the middle of all this reorganisation discussion, we're going to have county elections. I don't think it helps the clarity myself, but there you go. That's the decision that's been made. That's where they're going to end up. So in paragraph 17, it details what the government are looking for, i.e. a proposal shall seek to achieve for the whole area concerned the establishment of a single tier of local government, so just one tier, not the unitaries, counties and districts we currently have. It talks about a population size of 500,000, although in clarification talks and in ministerial talks, they have referred to a number of 350,000 as well, if you can make the case for that locally. It says that they must deliver high quality and sustainable public services to citizens. This is all about driving efficiency in local government. Ultimately, it's making local government cheaper, I imagine is what the government think, and more efficient. Whether it does those things remains to be seen. That's the government's aims. It wants us to detail how our proposals to work together will be structured, and it also wants to detail the new structures that will support that combined working, because even though across new councils there'll be a level of combined authority above that and the mayor above that. So, from paragraph 19, there's a table which sets out what we believe are the options that comply with the government's requirements. Okay? So, there's the option for no change, remain with a two-tier structure. That is not what the government are saying is the plan. So it details there that doesn't really seem to fit what the government is saying. They're saying reorganise. Leaving it as it is not an option. One unitary council for Lancashire, i.e. a unitary Lancashire of a population of about 1.5 million, seems a large council to me, seems a large council to us, and therefore is probably unworkable as a single unitary Lancashire. It's probably similar for two councils, because two councils in Lancashire, two unitaries, whether that's north and south, east and west, there's no proposal currently for anybody to do that. But again, that was proposed by the last Conservative administration at County Hall, Jeff Driver, Ectal. That will be a population of about 750,000 and doesn't seem to represent any local connections or what have you, and that documents that in the report there. The two options which are probably most likely are the 3 and 4 councils in Lancashire arrangements. Okay? The reason being is that the 3 unitary arrangement hits the 500,000 population mark, roughly, depending on how it's divvied up, and we can all discuss, there's an option shown as an example or various options shown as examples, but you can carve up Lancashire in 3 ways, lots of different ways. The 4 unitary arrangement, which has a population size nearer to between the 350 and the 500 on the 4 authorities that will generate, to us as a proposal would seem to generate the best proposal, because the best proposal that we're going to put forward tonight is for Chorley, South Ribble and West Lancashire to be one authority. Okay? The reason for that is we are like each other. Our demographics are generally similar. South Ribble is one of the most similar councils to us, and we are doing lots of joint work with them now. All our half our staff and our services are jointly run. And as we saw today at the union meeting, our staff effectively see themselves as one entity in many, many things. West Lancs is demographically similar to us. There are bits of West Lancs that are very deprived, bits of Skem and what have you, but even those areas of Skelmersdale are moving more to be more like the rest of the West Lancs than they are like Liverpool as time moves on from the end of the new town. That would then chuck up the need for another 3 areas in Lancashire, and again, examples of that are shown, but in the nicest possible way. The way you end up in trouble in reorganisation is trying to work out what everybody else wants rather than what you want. You're better off just focusing on what you want and what your neighbours are after, as opposed to trying to carve up the rest of the world or Lancashire, because that way lies trouble. The other options, and you know, people can put forward a proposal for 5 authorities, but based on 5 authorities on a 1.5 million population, that would be 300,000 populations roughly. That is lower than anything the government has clarified previously. And I have been on webinars with the ministers and with top civil servants who, when asked directly, and they were asked directly by the leader of Preston, was a population of 250,000 acceptable? They said no, probably not. It would have to be at least 350,000. So therefore, we think more authorities would not be acceptable. People may come forward with them, but let the government decide on that. If they do, we will come back and have another discussion. So the preferred option for Chorley, as it details in paragraph 20, builds on work we did way back in 2020, which itself built back on work we'd done way back in 2015 when we actually proposed a unitary Chorley. Okay? The days of a unitary Chorley are gone. The government and the civil servants will not wear it. The reason we did the work in 2020 to establish last time this was up for discussion was because the facts that applied then are still the same facts that apply now. West Lancs and South Ribble are still most like us. South Ribble are more deeply enmeshed now. There is an option under the 3 arrangement to probably go with Preston as well. Preston is a city, and Preston is different than the other 3 boroughs in the fact it is very much an urban city and not a mix of rural and urban boroughs like the rest of us are. So that, Mr. Mayor, is the logic for doing it. It isn't going to happen, apart from along the timetable, which I've already highlighted, which is a mayoral election in 2026, potentially move into some shadow arrangements in 2027 and elections in 2028. So it seems a long way off when you put it like that. It will mean change, but as I said earlier in the meeting around the budget, Chorley and South Ribble councils, but particularly Chorley Council, is very well run. And I'm not saying that because we're the administration, it's very well run by the officers, it's very well run by all the councillors, and it's very well respected across Lancashire as a good council. South Ribble is also seen as a good council, and our influence has been noted in that because we have helped them out in the past. So, you know, we've helped them make them what they are. As a result, we are not short of people who would like to work with us. We have offers from every part of Lancashire to come and work with Chorley. A lot of places don't have lots of offers, and a lot of places can't work with the neighbours. That's a problem for Lancashire, and that's a problem Lancashire will have to sort out. But we need to focus on what's best for Chorley residents in any reorganisation, whether we agree on that reorganisation or not. And therefore, our proposal that Chorley's residents' interests are best served being in a unitary authority of those 3 councils as previously described, and that's what I'd like to take to the meeting next week, to be very clear that that's what Chorley wants to see happen. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bradley. Councillor Wilson, would you like to second?
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillor Bradley then very succinctly covered a very broad topic and not a straightforward one. I'm not going to obviously repeat the details around how it may be split up in the future. The only thing I would point to members, just for the purpose of clarity, is that for many, many years, in all my time in politics and many colleagues with me, recognise that two-tier working just does not work and no longer works. The county council and the borough councils, it doesn't work. I don't think it ever really has worked that well, if I'm being honest. And I'll obviously say it's worse when the Conservatives are in. The Conservatives will say it's worse when Labour are in. But the reality is, over 20, 25 years of observation, I have never been convinced that the two-tier system we have serves the public interest the best. And therefore, change is required. The difficulty with change is it's difficult to get agreement on it. It's time-consuming. It's costly. But you have to take that short-term pain. You have to go through these arguments and these discussions in order to actually get to a point where you can have something much better in the future. And I think there is an opportunity to have something much better in the future. Councillor Bradley referred to the previous times this debate has come into our attention. Never has it been so serious. Never has it been driven so clearly by central government. It's been floated at times. We've jumped on to see if there's something we can try and make work. But only this time have we got a government that is absolutely committed to making it happen. For better or worse, this is a major plank and a major policy that they're going to drive forward. So I would seriously urge members to engage in that process. Get the best deal for Chorley. Don't sit on the sidelines and gripe. Get the best deal for our residents. Let's get on board. Let's give Councillor Bradley that authority in the negotiations with other leaders that it will need. And I believe that the option put forward, although we can all think of disadvantages of any change, but the option put forward is the best option and the one that can serve our residents in the most productive manner for many, many years to come, should these reforms go through. So I'm happy to second Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Thrown open the floor, and Councillor Whittaker.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Local government reorganisation was last altered in 1974, 50 years ago. About 20 years ago, there was a proposal in Chorley for a unitary Chorley. I spoke against it and got suspended for about 6 weeks, along with Richard too. I don't think Moister was here then, so I very much support the option shown on paragraph 21 of West Lancashire, Chorley and South Ribble. As Alistair said, there's been evidence of working together, and those members of the County Council who were present here, who witnessed yesterday a 7-hour debate that could have been over within an hour and a half, I almost lost the will to live. There was great contributions from Mark, and that was it. Lancashire at the moment doesn't work. The two-tier system does not work. Trying to get something, as I try as a district councillor, and to try and get something, and as a county councillor, it's a bit like punching fog. It goes into a black hole and it comes back about 3.5 weeks later, and it says, sorry, we can't do that. So it's just not working. This proposal, I think, will work. My only concern, and I made it plain before, is the democratic involvement in terms of number of members and the way that members will be involved in the decision-making process. At the moment, the decision-making process at Lancashire is, trying to think of a polite word. We listened yesterday to the budget, to the 7 or 8 cabinet members talking from a pre-prepared script about how wonderful the whole exercise was. And they've just spent, and you'll be getting things if you haven't got it already, a leaflet through the post costing about £70,000 or £80,000, saying how wonderful Lancashire is. It isn't, and it isn't working, and residents know that. So I'm very much in favour of the proposal that Councillor Wilson has proposed, Bradley and Wilson have proposed, about this West Lancs, Chorley and South Ribble. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Sutherland.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Could I congratulate Councillor Bradley on his very enthusiastic, descriptive, and if I may say, pragmatic approach to this. I can well understand and well agree it works well for Chorley. It would work well with South Ribble because of the shared services aspect. But a quick peruse of the agenda for West Lancashire's council meeting didn't seem quite so enthusiastic for this. In fact, it was one word, noted. And I'm just wondering, can he tease this out when he does the Lancashire Leaders meeting next week, just to see how this is going to work? Have we got the three authorities on board with us? I get the South Ribble thing and I get how it works with Chorley, but I would like to be sure how this is working with West Lancashire, because if they're not, as you will quite rightly pointed out before, where certain people do not with certain other people, it doesn't work. From my perspective, sitting out there in Chorley Rural West, it works great because, as you well know, 200 yards from my doorstep, we're in West Lancashire. I get it. But I would just like to know what West Lancashire's feelings are on this. Thank you. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Bradley.
Yes, so two things. And I think the leader of Rossendale said it very well at the last meeting. I would love not to be in our particular part of East Lancashire, but we are. Yeah, we are geographically where we are. It's no secret that West Lancashire would like to be part of the Liverpool City region. As an administration they would, and they have asked to do that in the past. They were an associate member previously of the Combined Authority in Liverpool, the Liverpool Combined Authority. So that's what they wanted. The government said no. They said, you stick within Lancashire, we're not changing the boundaries of Liverpool, Manchester. We've talked before now about being associate members of Manchester, as have Rossendale, because we do as much, you know, our economic corridor is Manchester, as is Rossendale through Bury. So and Blackburn were an associate member of Greater Manchester. Similarly, Lancaster would actually quite like to be in Cumbria with South Lakes. But the government has said, no, you stick within Lancashire, we've got a range. And the reason for this, members, is the government want to deal with 5 mayors in the northwest of England. So they want the northwest of England, they come to the northwest of England, deal with 5 mayors who speak for all the reformed councils in their areas. So in Cheshire, they'll have a mayor, Lancashire, Cumbria, Liverpool and Manchester. Currently, they've got 2 mayors, they're heading towards a mayor in Cheshire. Cumbria, they've already reorganised. You can take your own views on how they reorganised it, but they'll get a mayor there. The missing piece in the jigsaw is Lancashire. That's why they want a mayor. And for a mayor to sit over effectively 14 or 15 councils won't work. It will be bedlam. Look at the way Liverpool was in its early days. There was votes going on when people were out of the room and all that. So what they want to do is get a simplified structure that can then work under a mayor and they know who they're dealing with. That way they can have their council, the regions, whatever they're going to call it, and that's what they want. They particularly want it in the northwest because the northwest is an economic driving engine house. Liverpool and Manchester feel held back because they've not got the wider area around them. The northeast has got its act together. Yorkshire is getting its act together. There are areas of the south of England I suspect they will never get their act together because, for example, in East Anglia, you have very small borough district councils who generally are homogenous but don't want to work with each other in terms of they are all at one political persuasion, and then you have little isolated pockets of Norwich, Ipswich and all those kind of places. So, but we've got to focus on Lancashire, and we've got to focus on South Lancashire, in my view. We can't even get too wound up about what happens in East Lancashire because East Lancashire will have its own bum fight. And in reality, we are not part of East Lancashire, we are part of South Central Lancashire. So let's just keep focused on that. To reassure you, Councillor, we've had a conversation, even today, as late as today, and lots of conversations. West Lancs, as we saw last night from their meeting, is a very balanced council, very precarious politics in West Lancs, and therefore at times they can't be as, have a unanimous consensus that we have, luckily here, etc. They know that they can't jump from being in the very extreme west over us and South Ribble to be part of another area. So they are tied by their geography to our area. They accept that, they know that, but, and this is also the thing that will come out in reorganisation, and this is why, in my view, we should have cancelled elections in a reorganisation period, is people will play politics locally, which will frustrate the wider benefits of reorganisation. And that, in my view, is a little bit what's happening in West Lancashire at the moment. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Do you want to come back, Councillor Sutton?
No, I'm fine with that, Mr Mayor. Thanks for that, Councillor.
Councillor Alan Platt.
I think firstly, I'd really like to thank Councillor Whittaker for his description of being in opposition. That's how it works. Well, hopefully. I mean, I couldn't help but notice, and I hope the officers will forgive me, but when you mentioned South Ribble, there was a sort of look sideways about the mention of how well behaved they are, how like us they are. Yeah, I couldn't help but notice the little glance. I'm not naming names. No, absolutely not. I don't know. I'm not telepathic. I mean, I think, you know, as you've probably gathered from Councillor Sutton's comments, you know, in principle, we're not opposed to this at all. I think looking at the documents and all the surrounding information on the various channels, it appears more who can avoid getting certain people in their area rather than what's beneficial. Certainly out on the coast, and possibly one of the places that Councillor Bradley mentioned, not a million miles away from here. So yeah, we can understand it fully. This, if the government is good to its word and it will go for the 350, this seems the best option to us. The only thing we would ask, or I can't find it now, we would like to do is, I'd like to move either an amendment or an addition to your recommendations 2, 3 and 4. That Council commits to a referendum of the residents of Chorley Borough to be completed prior to the submission of the final proposals on the 28th of November, and agrees to abide by the result of the referendum and reflect this in the final proposals. Just let the people speak. I know it's a time, I know we're going to get, it's a time thing, it's a cost thing, it's a whatever, but the time is imposed by, dare I say, your newfound colleagues.
Is that a formal amendment?
Yes, if you don't mind. Yeah.
We need a seconder for that.
We can ask for a seconder first.
Have we got a seconder? Councillor Sutherland.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to second that proposal. Amendum.
Seconder.
Well, hang on, Chair. Mr Mayor, I think if it was such an important addition, we should have had it circulated before the meeting. I think it's a bit incorrect to bounce a verbal amendment on something that is so critical to the party opposite that they need a referendum to be adhered to, but can't be bothered putting it in writing in advance of the meeting. It's not worth considering, Mr Mayor. In my view, it should really out of order.
Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I might just take exception with that. It's not worth considering. That's fine, but tell that to the residents of Chorley. The only reason I want to put it in is for the simple reason they should be asked. Now, if you don't think it's important to us, that's absolutely fine. That, I think, should be down to the people of Chorley to decide. They should have a say on that one there. In principle, I'm okay with the idea, but I think they should have a say.
Thank you, Councillor Sutton. Councillor Bradley.
Number one is it's been brought in a very poor manner. We've got a verbal proposal amendment which we haven't even got in writing to consider the wording of. So what are we committing to? And I've only had it read out to me, so I can't have to write it down and read it, understand it. But notwithstanding that, number one is what are we having a referendum on? Because the commitment to have a referendum on what? There is no proposal at the moment. It's not even been to government yet. So yes, maybe in 6 or 8 months' time you can ask for a referendum. That's fine. But a referendum on something that might happen in the future, or might not, is that you can't fetter somebody in the future on something you don't know what the reality is. So I'm aware it's a conservative tactic in parts of the county where they don't want reorganisation, is it's a delaying tactic to have a referendum, which would cost a lot of money to the public purse, probably £10 for every resident of Chorley, at least, to do that. We don't have local referendum on many things. There is no firm proposals. It's been brought in by a government that's got a massive mandate from the population as recently as last July. You can shake your head, Councillor Southern, but that's what they have got, a massive majority, one of the biggest ones ever, far bigger than any Conservative majority in recent history, bigger than Margaret Thatcher's. So all these things mitigate against an electoral stunt of the kind you're trying to pull at the moment, which is to back up the leaflets that are going out that Chorley Council is going to be abolished for some way. No, Chorley Council is going to be part of a larger entity that might repair the potholes in Lancashire that haven't been done by a Conservative administration for years and years and years. So if we want to all play politics on this, I thought we were having a serious conversation about the future of Chorley in Lancashire, not a stunt about having a referendum. Because what you can't do is ask somebody to what's your ideas about something which you don't even know what you're asking them their ideas about. You might as well howl at the moon, Councillor Southern, which I suspect is what you're doing.
Councillor Southern.
No, me and the moon are quite cool with each other, quite frankly. Okay, take on board what you're saying. What you're saying is we haven't actually got a proposal for a referendum on. Okay, that's fine. When we get the proposals of what we think this unitary authority should look like, can we go to the people of Chorley?
Councillor Bradley.
One of the things the government has asked us to do is to tell them how we are going to consult with the people of Chorley and reflect the views of the people of all of Lancashire. So they've asked us to do that. They haven't fettered us by saying you have to have a referendum. They haven't fettered us by saying how we have to do that. But I don't doubt that will be a discussion that we'll have in due course, which will say, we'll put the proposals as Lancashire. So again, I can't unilaterally decide how Lancashire is going to consult with its residents, because we'll have to do the same, I imagine, in all its areas. So it'll have to be equal. Yeah, you can't just have that part of Lancashire doing this and that part of Lancashire doing that. And that's perhaps what some of these councils who are trying to delay the process are probably not getting quite understood. So yes, happy to consult the residents of Chorley, happy to discuss further later in the year about how exactly we will do that. And you can do that by many means without having a referendum. Because as we all know, referendums work really well, don't they? I mean, the last one we had has worked so well, Councillor Southern. It's been a rip-roaring success, and Councillor Platt avoided answering the question about how the benefits of Brexit the other week at Rudshire College, and agreed we'd voted in different ways, but the jury's still out, but I'll stay on my side of the jury, if that's all right, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Southern.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll take your point there, Turns out the referendum worked out all right for me, but that's by the by. Yeah, it's not a stunt. I simply think that people of Chorley should be asked, if we're going to change this for unity thing, and don't forget, we're not opposed to it. In principle, I'm fine with it. I take on board everything that's been said. The two-tier system doesn't work. It has merits, but it doesn't work. Not for us in Chorley. And I'm okay with that, but I do think the people of Chorley should have a chance to say, yes, we agree with it, no, we don't. Now, it doesn't have to be a referendum as such. It could be some sort of consultation. But as long as we have something to say to the people of Chorley, that yes, this is the proposal we put forward, we propose to merge with South Ribble, West Lancashire, this is what we're proposing to you, what do you think of it? And it's as simple as that. Thank you, Mr Mayor. Excuse me? Did you say sit down there, Councillor Whittaker?
Right.
That's the pan calling the kettle black.
Point of order, Mr Mayor. Point of order, Mr Mayor. As Councillor Whittaker said, we're not in County Hall now. Right. So, I am more than happy to come back later in the year when we have more detail about what exactly is proposed and planned to discuss how we consult the people of Chorley. And we would have to do that in concert with the rest of Lancashire, following guidance from the government as well. And I don't think any of us at this point can commit to exactly how we do that. So I would politely request that you withdraw your amendment to the papers, because the best way is we come back to it later when we know what we're talking about.
Councillor Alan Platt, I'll come back to you, Councillor Southern, then will.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Firstly, I do take offence at being accused of a stunt. I don't have time to put stunts together. It was a genuine thought. In your own papers, you're talking about feedback from residents. There's no description how you're going to get the feedback, so we're all playing guessing games. So our suggestion, and now I'm quite happy to withdraw the amendment, don't worry about that, but we want commitment that the residents of Chorley will be given an opportunity to give their views and not have it foisted from somebody in Whitehall.
Thank you, Councillor Platt. Councillor Sutherland, did you want to come back as well?
Just a quick one on that, Mr Mayor, thank you. Yeah, as Councillor Platt pointed out, so long as we consult with the residents of Chorley, so that it works in their interests, and they can't say that they weren't consulted. Councillor Whittaker, you're better off being asleep at County Hall than you are here, but never mind.
No. We don't want to get into arguments here.
I think Councillor Bradley wants to come back, but the,
Right.
the proposer of the amendment has redrawn it, so I think this would probably be the final one.
Councillor Bradley.
No, sorry.
Anybody else? Right.
Right.
no, Councillor
In that case, if the amendment is withdrawn, I'm more than happy to commit to discussing this, as I just said before, and I've said it twice now on camera, so you've got the evidence, to commit to come back in future, later in the year when we've got more detail to discuss how we consult with the residents of Chorley, which will have to be in coordination with the government and the rest of Lancashire, because, as we said, we expect we'll have to do something jointly if we ever get to that point, Mr Mayor. But this is the first stage of that journey.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Platt.
Quite happy with that, Mr Mayor, and just as an aside, Councillor Bradley did mention the Runshaw, question time at Runshaw. Very, very enjoyable. Thoroughly enjoyed it myself. And apparently I'm going to be served a pot of humble pie next year, I gather. Your MP for South Ribble. We shall see. Yeah. But yeah, no. As I said, Councillor Bradley, provided we have that commitment, we're more than happy. I'm more than happy to withdraw the amendment.
Right, we've got the original recommendations on paras 2 and 4. Has anybody any more questions on that before we move to the vote? We'll move to the vote then. All those for? Against? Abstentions? That's been passed, thank you. Request to authorise an extended Councillor Martin's absence from meetings of the council. This is on pages 157 and 160. This item's for decision. Councillor Bradley.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, as the paper says, this is quite straightforward. It's a convention that, and obviously it's government rules that if a council's not attended a meeting in person within 6 months due to any reason that they potentially risk being disqualified as a councillor. In the past, in this council, we have extended that period by 3-month periods, usually when somebody's ill. Councillor Martin is ill at the moment and is signed off sick, so therefore we are requesting a 3-month extension because she fully intends coming back at some point in the future, so it's to give her that extra 3-month breathing space to get well again, Mr Mayor, and therefore I think it's entirely reasonable. We did the same for Councillor Henry Corns when he was ill a few years ago, and therefore that's the convention, and I would like to put that proposal forward, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bradley. Councillor Wilson.
Seconded,
please,
Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Anybody any comments? I'll just open it to the floor. Okay. Can we please move to vote? Recommendations are at para 2. All those for? Against? Abstentions? That's been passed. Thank you very much. Exclusion of the press and public. This item's for decision. Councillor Bradley.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Can I propose that we exclude the press and public at this stage to go into part 2 papers?
Thank you.